Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University, and in today's video, I want to talk to you about cueing. Okay, Cueing. It is a topic that has been, it's asked quite regularly, but a couple of folks have been really wondering, where do I find the concept of cueing? How would I know how to answer questions on the exam? What is the importance of cueing? And I can kind of answer those in reverse order. The importance of cueing is that if somebody's doing something wrong, you need to be able to give them some quick, easy, simple way to get them to correct the biomechanics of the movement. And that's generally what cueing is really designed for in the exercise portion. And I'm going to show you generally, I have the hard copy. And if you have the hard copy, you can use that. That's great. If you have the digital copy online, which is what I'm going to use in this video, just for ease of navigating to the information, it makes it a little easier for you as well. You just click in there and type in the word cueing in your search box. But from the perspective of the hard copy, you're generally going to find the material you need to answer the questions on an exam, for instance, in chapter 20. And I am going to guide you specifically to page 634 in your hard copy. And so the concept of cueing, critical, because if somebody's doing something incorrect, you need to correct them. Now, there's also sort of as an addition to this, if somebody is doing the exercise biomechanically correct, you may want to actually add a little bit of zest or intensity to the exercise while maintaining proper technique, but maybe shifting the weight or the position a little bit to help them to get even more out of the exercise. You can use cueing for that as well. So the concept of cueing is pretty straightforward. Now, NASM, just so you know, if you put it in your search bar or you look through the book, they will use the word cueing all the way from chapter 4, chapter 6, chapter 7, chapter 12, chapters 13, 14, 15. They will use the concept of cueing in any of the and all of the training modalities. So from stretching to SMR to balance plyometrics, all require the trainer to be able to effectively, quote, cue their clients, right, into corrective movements and or movement patterns that could be even more beneficial when they are doing it correctly. So what I want to do here is just guide you to the I would say probably the most important area, at least to start, if you're going to just look at the subject of cueing. And like I say, in the hard copy, this is on page 634, and it's figure 28. So the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, just real quick, keep in mind, this is probably one of the more important concepts that NASM wants you to kind of keep in mind from a kinesiological biomechanical perspective. Why? Because when you understand the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, the proper positioning of those joints during particular exercises or assessments, you've got a pretty good basis for starting to understand things such as overactive, underactive muscles, and some of the postural distortion. So that's, of course, another video. But here's what I want you to focus in on. When we talk about cueing, what we are really saying is that for any exercise that you do, from squats to dumbbell curls to any type of plyometric multiplanar, jumps or any of those more advanced type of exercises, there is technically an ideal or perfect way for the exercise to be performed. Then it's going to look a little different for every individual, but remember, you've got to have some basis, some association with the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. And that's what NASM is basically telling you. That's why they talk about it. When you look at the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, every exercise you do should have some association with the proper positioning of those checkpoints. I hope that makes sense. So when you look at this page, go ahead and read what they say in addition to tracking exercise, because this is what we do. We always assume that when we talk about intensity and the volume and the number of reps, whatever, that we are assuming that for the most part, the client is actually doing the exercise correctly. So we just focus on program design and reps and sets and intensity. No, 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 no. And NASM actually tells you, do not, as with all exercise, quality, i.e. proper technique, should always come before quantity or weight progression. In other words, don't be doing your squats incorrectly just so you can do a 300-pound squat when you actually should be using 135 to do it correctly. Okay, see what I'm doing? Air quotes, correctly. Well, how do we know that an exercise is being performed correctly? Well, this is where NASM has said, you might want to focus on the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. And that's probably a really, really good idea. Even for somebody that has, like myself, that's been training for 35 years, 40 years with clients. We all basically come to the same conclusion. Lift up your rib cage, pull your shoulder blades back, keep your head up, put your toes this way, put your butt right. That's the way it works. And after a while, it becomes the same thing over and over and over. But it is always based on basic biomechanical principles. And that's what this is helping you with. So if you're struggling with number one, well, where are they telling you how to cue? Well, slow down. Okay. First thing I need you to do is to look in this area right here. And they're going to tell you, when monitoring their clients' movements, provide appropriate corrections and cueing. So basically, when a client is doing a particular exercise, you're watching their technique and you're looking for corrections to be made and cue them into the proper positioning. Now, there it is. What is proper positioning? Well, NASM doesn't go as deep as, they could, but they do give you some really good ideas, which will help you in your cueing. And they put it right here. So figure 20-8 gives you an idea, and you can see she's basically doing her squat. And yeah, the parallel lines, yada, yada. But here it is, right? These are your 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. And what should they look like, feel like, taste like, smell like, right? No matter what. Now, we know the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints because of the postural assessments, the static and the dynamic postural assessments, right? And so if we kind of go back, you could look at those areas once again, but let's look here, the feet, right? The foot and the ankle, approximately shoulder width apart and pointing straight ahead. Stop. Don't read the rest. Don't read the rest. Now, that makes sense if you are the perfect average person with no musculoskeletal issues. But what do they tell you from a cueing perspective so that you understand proper biomechanics is that unless the exercise requires a different foot position, ladies and gentlemen, I never, ever, ever, and when I say never, ever, ever, ever do squats or have ever done squats with clients where their feet are shoulder width apart. That would be ridiculous. That makes no sense biomechanically. Okay. But from a purely standing postural perspective, yes, feet are shoulder width apart. That's what the concept of understanding planar motion, right, is all about. So that ideal postural position, but not during exercise. Oh, no. No, the way the hips and the pelvis, the femur are all the way the biomechanics are designed in the human body. I don't know anybody that does a proper squat with their feet shoulder width apart. But Doug, I want to train my outer quads. No, you don't. You don't even know what that makes no sense. That makes no sense. Okay. You're not training your outer vastus lateralis by keeping your feet close together. Okay. That's silly. Proper biomechanics has the feet wider than shoulder width apart. How much wider? I don't know. It depends on the person. Okay. The point is what NASM is saying correctly is that the feet should be approximately shoulder width apart, pointing straight ahead, unless the exercise requires a different foot position. Now, I'm going to tell you that when I do dumbbell curls standing, guess what? I do them with the feet shoulder width apart because that's normal postural position, maybe a little closer, but not during squats. You get it? So what they're saying from a cueing perspective is provide the appropriate corrections. Yeah, folks, her feet are roughly, and I'd actually put her feet wider apart, to be honest with you, but that's just me. The point is that irrespective of that, they're basically telling you your cueing, your corrections, the things you're saying are based on these these right here, these 5 things right here, right? So feet approximately shoulder width apart, pointing straight ahead. Now, the cue that you're going to apply is to correct that, right? If the exercise requires a different foot position. I hope that makes sense. The knees, remember, cueing for exercises is always going to start with understanding the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. The knees should be in line with the second, third toes. I have no idea how you figure that out, but whatever, okay? Avoid allowing knees to cave inward. Depending on the foot position, the knees might move in. Maybe I don't know, maybe they'll move out. But the point is that you would cue somebody on the knees when what? When what happens? Okay. When the knees are caving in for whatever, for any exercise, whatever it is they're doing, what do you know you can cue them? Put your feet wide. Do this. Knees out. That's where the cueing comes in, is to get them back into the proper positioning of the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints based on what you're seeing here. The hips level and in a neutral position. Not really sure what that fully means, but no, I'm just going to be honest with you. No, the hips should actually be backward a little bit, arching the lower back when you're doing a squat. The point is what they're telling you is that in very general way, the hips should be level, okay, i.e. not twisted from one side to the other, and in a neutral position, meaning what they're telling you is that the anterior and posterior tilt of the pelvis should not be directed one way or the other. And again, this is what they're telling you. In reality, oh no, you want the arch in your lower back to tighten up the lower back erector spinae muscles, especially when you're using very heavy weight. But to answer their question, this is what you would want to get the hips back to. So if you're asked a question about during a overhead shoulder press, the hips should be in a, which one of the following, right? And you would pick level and in a neutral position if that was the question. Then to the shoulders, how should the shoulders be in the shoulder girdle? Well, the cueing would bring them back into what? A neutral position. And what they're saying here correctly is avoiding protracting or elevating the shoulders. By the way, just go back to your assessments, to your movement assessments, the pushing assessment and the pulling assessment, right? Lifting up, that's not good. Well, if I'm now in the exercise part of my training and my client is doing a one-arm pulley row or just a regular seated pulley row, both arms are single, what's my cue going to be? Drop your shoulder blades or drop your shoulders down or pull your shoulder blades back, squeeze your shoulder blades back. That is a cue that you would use. Okay. So unless the exercise requires these positions, if I'm doing shrugs with a client, well, obviously I need to elevate my shoulders. So that's the point, is that using the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, and of course the head, cervical spine in a neutral position. By the way, I never use neutral as a cue, because neutral means nothing to me. What does neutral mean? Is it this or is it, right? I just don't have them tuck their chin and I don't have them march way up. If neutral works for you from a explanatory perspective, then use it. I just have never used it personally. So there is where your starting point is, right? Your 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. Know what NASM says is the ideal positions for this. And again, you would have already figured this out, or at least learned it, when you were doing your static postural assessments, and then for sure when you do your dynamic postural assessments. So now here's what folks are saying. Where in the book are you seeing the cues? And that's pretty simple, folks. And I'm just going to kind of manage my way through here with you. Just give me a second when I get past these little quizzes. The answer to the question is, let me move. Once you start getting into the actual exercises, okay, you see, as we're getting into exercises, now we get to this. Let me get past here. Now we get here. And this is page. Okay, I am on page in the hardcover, page 640. Once you see the little green, see how the little green technique box? This is where you should be able to deal with your cues. So the technique box is basically telling you this is proper technique. Now let's pull in the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, basically, and you should be able to navigate and manage through. Now I'll go with this. Well, let me go to the next one. Okay, so this is the multiplanar step-up balance curl to overhead press. And when pressing overhead, make sure the low back does not arch. There is your cue. How should the hips be positioned? Level, neutral, whatever. You can refer back to the kinetic chain checkpoint explanation. This may indicate overactivity. Okay, we already know this from our previous chapters that we read with respect to overactive, underactive muscles. Here's another one, single leg squat curl. Where is NASM explaining to you how to cue properly? Well, technically right here, when performing any version, only squat to the depth that can be safely controlled while maintaining what? What? Say it out loud, everybody. Ideal posture. You saw ideal posture with the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. Please don't get confused. If you're trying to figure out where and how NASM is explaining to you proper cueing, they're not going to write proper cueing. Say this. No, they're not going to say that. I wouldn't expect them to, because of obviously everybody's different. Everyone's biomechanics are different. But if they say ideal posture, what do you already know? Tell me ideal posture using the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. You should be able to do that. Come on, that was back in, I forgot what chapter. I hope that makes sense. The idea of cueing and understanding proper cueing during particular exercises is critical for a trainer. The fact that NASM doesn't tell you this is what you would say as a cue, it's not that big of a deal. Don't worry about it. They're giving you enough information to where you should know that no matter what exercise you're looking at, you shouldn't have your chin tucked in like this. I don't care whether it's this exercise or this exercise. Why? Because when we look at the 5 kinetic chain checkpoint ideal postural scenario, what should your cervical vertebrae be in, according to NASM? In a neutral position. Okay. Now, there are exceptions to that one kinetic chain checkpoint, right? It's when you do abdominals. Okay. Abdominals, you don't have your neck in a neutral or extended position. It technically flexes forward slightly to allow for the proper rolling of the shoulders forward into a protracted rib collapse, but that's only abdominal training. Does that make sense? So again, in all of the exercises that you see, again, there's the red boxes where they talk about safety, and green boxes they talk about technique. Hone in on that, and that will help you to understand what the actual cueing should be. Okay, and think about that. Now, again, if you want to spend time trying to understand it from that perspective, then sure, go through each of these exercises. It's not going to hurt, and it will definitely help you. If there are questions on cueing, depending on how many there are, will help you to answer those questions. If you got a lot out of this, if you got a little out of it, let's do this. If you got a little, moderate, or a lot out of this one video, please write that in the comment section. You can write something like "got it" or "understood." Anything that lets us know that this was an effective, helpful video. Please remember, if you haven't done so, to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Head on over to the Facebook page. Okay. If you're not in there, it's a private group just for those individuals that are studying and preparing to sit for their NASM national exam. And as always, we are here to help you. If you would like to learn more about our exam study course, then it is click the link. It is in that little box where all that wording is. Okay. And then there's this link in there. Just click onto that. It'll take you right to it, and let us know, of course, how we can be of assistance. As always, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.